right, a top focus and beyond right now. India and the United States of America are all set to hold trade talks in New Delhi today. India's chief negotiator and special commerce secretary Rajesh Agrawal confirmed on Monday that U.S. chief negotiator Brendan Lynch is visiting India for the discussions. Both the sides are in a positive frame of mind on trade issues, and the talks, of course, it marks a turnaround in bilateral ties after weeks of U.S. criticism, further reviving hopes for progress on a free trade agreement that had been derailed by tariffs imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump, a whopping 50% over India's purchase of Russian oil. And today's meeting could set the stage for the sixth round of trade talks, which was earlier planned for August 25th in New Delhi, but then postponed after Trump imposed a 25% punitive tariff on India on August 7th, along with a 25% reciprocal tariff, among the steepest duties faced by any U.S. trading partner. An additional levy linked to India's purchase of Russian crude oil took effect on August 27th. Meanwhile, White House trade advisor Peter Navarro said he believes that India is now ready to engage on trade. He also suggested that talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi could help resolve the differences.
Are they the worst? You call them the Maharaja of tariffs?
The Maharaja of tariffs. But, Joe, the Modi, Prime Minister Modi sent out a very conciliatory, nice, constructive tweet, whatever they do in India, and President Trump responded to that. We'll see that. This is how this works. But as a practical matter, we know that on the trade side, they have the highest tariffs of any major country. They have very high non-tariff barriers. We had to deal with that like we're dealing with every other country that does that. And by the way, there's this issue of India buying Russian oil, which he never did. You understand this?
It never did. I didn't realize that
before 2020.
And for more on this, my colleague Shivan is bringing us more details right here from WION headquarters. Shivan, give us a roundup of how things reached this point. Of course, the back and forth and the build-up to the much-needed trade talks scheduled to take place between New Delhi and Washington today.
Rajesh, India's chief negotiator Rajesh Agrawal called it a continuation of trade talks between India and the US, and he also mentioned that this is not an official round of negotiations, but it will definitely be a discussion with US chief negotiator Brendan Lynch. Now, here's the build-up. 1st September, those images of Modi, Xi and Putin, those resonated across the world, and especially they went from Tianjin all the way to Washington, and they registered very deeply in the US. The next few days, there was enough tension coming in from, from the US. Peter Navarro coming out with several comments again and again. 6th of September, that is when Trump even posted that US has lost India to China and Russia. And again, that was a tweet, that was a message on social media which did not resonate very well. But later that day, when Trump was asked by a journalist in the Oval Office about losing India and what he meant by it, Trump completely negated it. He said, there's no such thing. I don't think we have lost India. Now, here is where that signal came from the US with a softer tone, and Prime Minister Modi wasted no time in responding. Soon enough, this is what the Prime Minister said: I fully reciprocate Trump's sentiments. And mind you, till now, there was no response from the Indian Prime Minister to the host of messages coming from Trump and his close aides. Few days later, this is the 10th of September, there was another reconciliatory message which came from Trump on his Truth Social platform, saying that India and US are continuing negotiations and that he is pleased about it, and calling Prime Minister Modi his good friend. Again, Indian Prime Minister wasted no time, responded saying India and US are natural partners, stating the limitless potential of India and US partnership. So I'd just like to go back to what Navarro was saying, and the bite we just played saying that the message came from India and US responded. It actually happened the other way around. So the ball got rolling from there again, and here we are now with the negotiations or the discussions on that to continue.
Right, Shivan, much needed, of course. But as far as India's exports is concerned, India put out certain figures recently. If you can perhaps share those numbers and more on that with us.
Yeah, Rajesh, it's interesting to note that these figures were released just last evening. So the signaling is very clear. Let me go over it again. And of course, last evening means just hours before the negotiations and the discussions are to happen, which is scheduled for today. Now, India's Ministry of Commerce and Industry put out a report, a detailed report mentioning how India's surging merchandise exports and falling imports have cut India's August trade deficit, this is year-on-year difference, by half. Now, the cumulative exports for merchandise and services during the April to August period this year is estimated at $349.35 billion US dollars. And this is, when you compare it to the same period just last year, it shows a growth of 6.18%. Talking about total exports, India's total exports were up 9.3% over its level in August just last year. And that includes gems and jewelry, petroleum products, drugs and pharmaceuticals, non-petroleum exports as well. Talking about imports, India has shared the figures. Total imports, that are merchandise and services combined, for August this year, it's estimated to have a negative growth of -7% vis-a-vis what happened in August last year. So imports have come down, exports have gone up. India's trade deficit contracted by more than 54% to $9.9 billion in August this year, driven by a surge in merchandise exports and a continued strong performance in services exports, and of course a significant reduction in merchandise imports, as we just shared the figures with you. So that's where things stand. The signaling is very clear. The figures are out there, and today the negotiations and the discussions are going to continue, and we'll know where things go from there.
Right, absolutely. Shivan, thanks for getting us the latest on that. All eyes are on New Delhi-Washington trade talks after, of course, the US president's tariff tirades against New Delhi. But thanks, Shivan, for getting us the latest on this.